Pregnant by a horse? This question shook the small town and Marisol herself. When Marisol Morales' belly began to grow uncontrollably during her pregnancy, it became something frightening, almost monstrous. Since Marisol spent entire days next to Major, her beloved horse, rumors quickly began to spread. However, no one could even imagine what was truly happening. When the truth came to light, the entire town was in shock. Emilio adjusted his straw hat and wiped his forehead, looking at the orange horizon. It was the end of the day at the Ruiz ranch. All the chores were already done, but his wife still hadn't appeared. He headed to the barn, where he knew he would most likely find Marisol with her horses. The strong smell of hay and leather filled the air, but to his surprise it was empty. He walked between the stalls, hearing only the quiet whinnies of the animals. "Marisol?" he called, but there was no answer. Her absence made his heart clench with an anxiety he couldn't explain. Marisol adored spending hours in the barn caring for the horses, especially Major, a black and shiny stallion, her favorite. It was strange that they were nowhere to be found. Suddenly in the distance, the sound of hooves clattered. Emilio came out of the barn and saw Marisol galloping majestically on Major. The horse moved impressively. His muscles worked like a perfect mechanism. Even from a distance, Emilio could see the smile on her face. It was almost a cinematic scene. When Marisol stopped the horse in front of the house, she dismounted as if she'd been doing it all her life. "You're still here? I thought you'd already gone to take a bath," she said casually. "I was looking for you," he replied, crossing his arms. "You went far again, didn't you?" She smiled slyly and stroked Major's neck. "We were just exploring the trails beyond the hill. It's so peaceful there. Just him and me." Emilio shook his head and smirked, but a slight annoyance showed through his smile. "Sometimes I think you love Major more than me," he said. Marisol raised her eyebrows and lightly patted him on the shoulder. "Don't talk nonsense. You know why he's so important to me." Emilio knew. He remembered well the day when Marisol's father gave her Major as a child. She was going through a hard time then, trying to cope with the loss of her mother, and the horse became her emotional support. Now, years later, after her father had also passed away, Major remained the last link connecting Marisol to her childhood and memories of her parents. "I know," Emilio said softly. "It's just that sometimes I worry. You spend so much time alone with him, riding for hours as if you want to run away from the world." "I'm not running away from the world," she replied simply. "I just need time for myself to think. Major makes me feel like my father is still here. You understand?" Emilio nodded but didn't answer. He understood her, but that didn't make it any easier to watch the bond she had with the horse. Although it was illogical, a particular jealousy sometimes flared up inside him, especially because Marisol seemed to open up more to Major than to him. She began to notice changes in her body. She felt constant fatigue, and the morning bouts of nausea were becoming more frequent. One morning while grooming Major, she was suddenly overcome by such severe dizziness that she had to sit right down on the earthen floor of the stable. That same night, sitting next to Emilio at dinner, while he wiped his hands with a rag after a long day repairing a broken fence, Marisol began nervously. "Emilio, I need to tell you something." "What happened?" he asked, looking at her with concern. I think I'm pregnant." For a moment, Emilio froze in silence, trying to comprehend what he had heard. When reality finally hit him, his face lit up with a wide smile. "Are you serious?" Marisol nodded, still unsure how he would react. "That's incredible," he exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "Oh my God, Marisol, you've just given me the best gift in the world." She laughed, finally relaxing for the first time in several days. The relief she felt was enormous. Perhaps now they could truly begin a new chapter, full of happiness. But while the future seemed bright, no one could predict what lay ahead, and soon Emilio would receive devastating news. The next morning, the couple got up early. Their doctor's appointment was scheduled for 10 a.m., and they had a considerable distance to cover to the neighboring town. Emilio was excited, even more so than Marisol. While preparing the car, he asked, "Are you ready, my love?" She nodded, touching her still flat belly. Despite her caution, she couldn't deny that she was also excited. The thought of her pregnancy being confirmed made everything in their life finally seem to make sense. When they arrived at the clinic, it was relatively empty, as expected for a small town. Dr. Herrera, an experienced graying doctor, was well known in the district for his kindness and professionalism. He warmly greeted them, starting a conversation about the farm while arranging papers on his desk. "Well, Marisol, tell me what happened," he said, gesturing for her to sit down. Marisol quickly exchanged a glance with Emilio before answering. "Well, doctor, a few weeks ago I started feeling very tired. Also, almost every morning I have—" She hesitated. Dr. Herrera nodded, making notes in a notebook. "Something else?" "Yes, sometimes I feel dizzy. And my friend said it might be pregnancy, but I'm not sure. It could be something else." Dr. Herrera smiled slightly. "Those are classic pregnancy symptoms, but of course, we need to confirm it before drawing any conclusions. Have you had changes in your menstrual cycle?" Marisol blushed slightly. "Yes, I have." Emilio squeezed her hand, smiling encouragingly. "That's why we're here, doctor. We want to confirm if she's expecting a baby," he added, a sparkle in his eyes. "Okay, we'll run a few tests to find out for sure. But to get a little ahead of things, let's do an ultrasound. We can see a lot, even in the early stages." Marisol's heart beat faster as she followed the doctor to the examination room. Emilio didn't leave her side for a second. The room was small but cozy, with soft lighting creating a calm atmosphere. "Lie down here, please," said the doctor, pointing to the couch. Marisol obediently lay down, pulling her shirt up over her belly. Dr. Herrera applied cold gel and began the examination. "Are you ready?" he asked, looking at them. Silence filled the room as the image began to appear on the screen. At first, Marisol couldn't make anything out, but gradually a small shape became discernible. Dr. Herrera leaned in intently, studying the screen. He adjusted the equipment. Marisol immediately noticed a change in his expression. "Doctor, is everything all right?" she asked in an uncertain voice. "Yes, everything's fine," he replied, but a strange note sounded in his voice. He continued to look at the screen for a few more seconds before finally turning to them. "So," began Dr. Herrera with an enigmatic expression on his face, "judging by what I see, I can confirm, Marisol, you are pregnant." Marisol breathed a sigh of relief, and Emilio squeezed her hand joyfully. "I knew it! I'm going to be a dad!" he exclaimed. But the doctor had something else to say. He leaned in slightly, adjusting the ultrasound monitor. "However," he said, making a deliberate pause. Emilio frowned. Joy was replaced by confusion. "However what, doctor?" Dr. Herrera took a deep breath and looked at the screen again. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "There's something else here, something we didn't expect." Marisol's heart began to pound wildly. Emilio leaned forward as if trying to see the screen better. "Doctor, is everything all right?" he asked tensely, scrutinizing the doctor's face. Marisol looked at the doctor. Dr. Herrera raised a finger, asking for a little patience as he adjusted the transducer on her belly. "Marisol, I'll speak plainly. You are not pregnant with a child." Emilio's voice trembled with anxiety. "What do you mean, not with a child? Doctor, what are you talking about?" "I'm not pregnant with a child? Then what am I pregnant with?" Dr. Herrera smiled now, with a slightly mischievous glint in his eyes, as if saving the most interesting part for last. "You are not pregnant with one child. You are pregnant with twins. Congratulations." For a moment, the couple froze in shock. Their eyes widened, processing what they had heard. Then, like a wave of emotion, tears streamed down their faces. "Twins?" she whispered, almost not believing it. "Twins," the doctor confirmed with an encouraging smile. Emilio laughed nervously, then hugged Marisol tightly. "Oh my God, two! I can't believe it. It's incredible. Are they both healthy, doctor?" he asked, still embracing her. "Yes, both are growing well. Judging by the size, Marisol, you are already 2 months along." After the ultrasound, Dr. Herrera gave the couple recommendations for health care during pregnancy. They listened attentively, determined to follow all instructions. When they left the clinic, they were overflowing with happiness. On the way home, conversations revolved only around the future. Emilio couldn't stop talking about how amazing it would be to have twins. Marisol dreamed tenderly of the moment she could hold both babies, but deep in her soul, Marisol still felt something troubling her. It wasn't pure sadness or fear, but a barely perceptible anxiety, almost an intuition she couldn't explain. Marisol tried to push these thoughts away, focusing on the joy of the moment. She suspected this feeling wasn't just a rational fear, but a premonition of something much larger, unexpected, and frightening that was about to change their lives, shaking not only their family, but the entire small town. In the following days after the doctor's visit, their days were filled with a whirlwind of emotions and preparation. The thought that they were expecting twins seemed unreal to the couple. Emilio immediately started planning how to turn the old guest room into a nursery. Marisol, realizing she needed more rest, immersed herself in preparing for the baby's arrival. Sitting on the porch with a notebook in hand, she spent hours making lists of necessities: cribs, diapers, clothes. From time to time, she would sketch ideas. While Emilio dealt with repairs and farm work, Marisol used her free time to spend more hours with Major. She felt he understood something, as if sensing something important was happening. Their bond, already strong, became even deeper. One day, as the sun bathed the ranch fields in golden light, Marisol went to the pasture to tell him the news. Major was grazing freely under the rays of the setting sun. Spotting Marisol, he immediately trotted over and headed towards her, as always. "Hello, my friend," she said with a smile, stroking his neck. "I have important news for you." Major tilted his head as if understanding her, his dark, attentive eyes fixed on Marisol, waiting for her to speak. "I'm pregnant," she continued, her voice trembling with emotion. "And not with one, but with two babies. So our rides will have to wait a bit, at least until they're born, okay?" Major whinnied softly as if understanding. He lowered his head and gently nudged his warm muzzle against Marisol's belly, lingering there for a moment. "You understand everything, don't you, my big friend?" she whispered, stroking his mane. "It will be hard without our rides, but I promise we'll ride together again as soon as it's safe." Major whinnied again and followed Marisol as she walked towards the house. Wherever she went, he followed her relentlessly. Emilio, who had been watching the scene leaning on the fence, shook his head with a smile. "This guy seems like he's going to be a father too," he joked. Marisol laughed, stopping for a moment to stroke Major's neck again. "If it were up to him, I think he'd want to put the kids under his name." Emilio laughed loudly, then shook his head, feigning seriousness. "No doubt about it. He seems even more caring than me, and jealous too." Marisol winked at him playfully, and she wasn't wrong. Every time Emilio approached Marisol while she was near Major, the horse immediately tried to intervene. He would carefully nudge Emilio with his head or step between them, as if protecting his mistress. "Hey, take it easy, buddy," said Emilio, barely keeping his balance after being pushed by Major. Marisol usually ended up laughing. "Major, stop it! You know Emilio is my husband." But it didn't help much. Every time Emilio got close to his wife, Major immediately started moving to separate them. And if they locked him in the stable, he became restless, stomping his hooves and neighing loudly as soon as he saw them together. "I've never met a horse like that before," Emilio muttered, looking at Major through the fence. "It's like he really doesn't want to share you with anyone." Marisol smiled, resting her head on Emilio's shoulder. "He's been used to me since childhood, and you know how much he means to me. He's like the last living connection to my father." "I know, and I respect that," Emilio replied. "But sometimes I feel like he just can't stand me." "Nonsense, he's just jealous. You need to earn his trust. Maybe with a couple of apples?" Marisol laughed. Emilio shrugged but couldn't help smiling. Major was clearly possessive, but his love for Marisol was obvious. To Emilio, this behavior only highlighted the unique bond between them. The days passed. Marisol gradually adapted her routine, reducing physical exertion to protect the pregnancy. Although she had to give up riding, she still spent hours in the stable, just talking to Major, sharing her thoughts, worries, and dreams about the future. The horse would whinny in response, lean towards her, and Marisol would smile, feeling completely in harmony. But while everything on the ranch looked calm, something elusive began to be felt in the air, like a storm cloud on the horizon. The happiness seemed serene, but inside grew a foreboding of change. The next months of pregnancy flew by surprisingly fast, but brought noticeable changes that couldn't be ignored. When the third month began, Marisol noticed that her belly looked larger than she expected. "Probably the babies are just big," she told herself. gently running her palms over her rounded belly. However, Emilio noticed it too. It seemed that every morning her belly was noticeably larger than the day before. One evening, as they were getting ready for bed, he couldn't hold back. "Honey, are you sure this is normal?" he asked, pointing to her belly, which was growing every day. "Emilio, please," Marisol laughed. "We're having twins. Of course, my belly will be bigger." "But don't you think it's growing too fast?" he continued with concern. "Maybe they'll be as big and strong as you," she teased, trying to dispel his worries and her own. However, doubts began to creep in. When Marisol came into town, her friends and acquaintances couldn't take their eyes off her belly. "Oh my God, Marisol, you're so big!" exclaimed Marina, pressing her hands to her face. "Are you already in your last month?" Marisol smiled. "Actually, only the third." Marina's eyes widened. "Third? How? Your belly is like mine was at 9 months." Marisol shrugged, trying to brush it off. Every pregnancy is individual, but the comments became more frequent. At the market, in the cafe, even at church, people stared and whispered. "It's impossible," some murmured, but it was impossible to ignore. Marisol couldn't help but notice that the larger her belly grew, the more attentively people looked at it. It seemed they were mentally calculating how much time was left until the birth and didn't believe her answers. "Don't you think it's strange?" Emilio asked when Marisol told him about the remarks. "No, every pregnancy is individual. The doctor said the twins are big," she insisted, though her voice wavered slightly. Emilio tried not to press, but the anxiety was becoming harder to ignore. At the beginning of the 4th month, Marisol started feeling frequent back pain. "It must be because of the weight of the belly," Emilio told her while she tried to find a comfortable sleeping position. Nausea still appeared from time to time, and dizziness caught her off guard during chores. Despite all this, she continued to attribute everything to normal pregnancy symptoms. Finally, the day of the consultation to find out the baby's genders arrived. Emilio seemed more excited than ever, while Marisol experienced a mixture of anxiety and joy. When they arrived at the clinic, Dr. Herrera warmly welcomed them, but couldn't hide his surprise upon seeing Marisol. "Oh my God, Marisol," he began jokingly. "It seems your babies are taking up all the space. Your belly has grown significantly since the last time." Marisol laughed, shaking her head. "Believe me, doctor, you're not the only one who's noticed that." "Is this normal for twins?" Emilio asked, not hiding his concern. "Yes, in general, it's normal," the doctor replied, though his facial expression betrayed some anxiety. "But let's see that everything is in order." Marisol lay on the couch, and the doctor began the ultrasound examination. The sound of tiny hearts soon filled the room, bringing instant smiles to the spouses. Dr. Herrera watched the screen carefully. "Ready to find out the baby's genders?" he asked, smiling. Marisol and Emilio held hands, excited. The doctor exhaled. "Emilio, you will have a pair, a boy and a girl." Marisol and Emilio screamed and cried. Emilio kissed Marisol's forehead as she wiped away tears. "It's just wonderful. We couldn't wish for anything better." While the spouses celebrated, Dr. Herrera continued to look at the screen. His expression gradually became more serious. Adjusting the equipment, he took several measurements and paused before turning off the monitor. "Is everything all right, doctor?" Marisol asked, noticing the change in his tone. "Yes, the babies are in perfect condition. Both correspond to their developmental stage. Their sizes are within the norm. Everything is fine with them." "Then why do you look like that?" Emilio asked worriedly, leaning closer to the couch. "The thing is, something worries me. Although the baby's sizes are normal, I can't say the same about your belly, Marisol. It's larger than I expected, even for a twin pregnancy." Marisol quickly glanced at Emilio and then looked back at the doctor. "Is this a cause for concern?" "Not for now," replied the doctor. "Perhaps it's just an individual characteristic, but we need to keep an eye on it. We will measure the growth of the uterus and monitor the dynamics in the coming weeks." Emilio nodded, but Marisol couldn't shake off the anxious feeling beginning to grow in her soul. "For now, there's no reason to worry," Dr. Herrera said, trying to reassure them. "The most important thing is that the babies are healthy. Just try to rest more and avoid physical exertion." Marisol and Emilio left the office with conflicting feelings. Although the joy of expecting two children was sincere, the doctor's words left a shadow of uncertainty in Marisol's heart. Weeks passed, and the jokes soon gave way to much less friendly comments. People began to notice not only the size of her belly, but also her love for horses, especially Major. The bond between her and this animal was well known in the town, and rumors began to spread slowly but destructively. At the grocery store, Marina, Marisol's best friend, was shopping when she heard a group of women whispering in the next aisle. "Have you seen Marisol? That's not a belly with twins. I heard she spends more time with that horse of hers than with her husband." The women whispered quietly, but malice was evident in their voices. Marina's blood boiled, but before she could confront them with the truth, she saw Marisol enter the store. All eyes instantly turned to her as she walked towards the fruit section. Whispering began to spread through the hall. "Oh my God, she's about to burst. Maybe she's carrying a foal. Did you see that belly? It's unnatural." Marisol heard snippets of conversations. Her cheeks burned. She hurriedly gathered her groceries and left the store as quickly as she could, feeling her face flushed with shame. The rumors quickly spread beyond the streets and filled social media. Marisol had always loved sharing photos of her pregnancy, proud of her babies, but the comments became cruel. "What a huge belly. There must be a whole horse inside. If it's born with a horse's face, we'll already know who the father is." Emilio, who usually ignored gossip, began to notice how it affected Marisol. She avoided leaving the house, sat staring at her phone for long periods with a sad expression. "What happened?" he would ask. "Nothing, don't worry," she would answer, trying not to make a big deal of it. But he knew it wasn't true. One afternoon, while Emilio was at the bank, he passed a group of girls sitting on the sidewalk. They were whispering and laughing. "She's in the hospital because the foal grew too big," said one, causing another burst of laughter. "Do you think the horse will come visit her? They must really miss each other," another girl mocked, barely containing her laughter. Emilio stopped abruptly. His blood boiled. He clenched his fists, took a deep breath, but couldn't restrain himself. He turned sharply and walked towards the group. "Does this seem funny to you?" His voice trembled with fury. The girls instantly stopped laughing. Their faces froze. One tried to act like nothing had happened, but Emilio didn't give her the chance. "Aren't you ashamed?" he continued in a firm, unwavering tone. "Sitting here on the street discussing someone else's life like it's entertainment? You should find something to do instead of humiliating someone going through such a hard time." Silence fell. The girl's cheeks began to redden. "My wife is in the hospital because she has a tumor that threatens her life and the lives of our children. And you think that's a reason for mockery? Does it seem amusing to you? Imagine if it were your mother in her place. Would you like it if someone joked about her so vilely?" One of the girls lowered her head, clearly remorseful. Another opened her mouth to say something, but Emilio raised his hand, cutting her off. "Not another word. You have not an ounce of sympathy, not an ounce of shame. The only thing I expect from you now is silence. Shut your dirty mouths, because if I hear such things again, you'll have to deal with me." Finally, one of them spoke in a trembling voice. I didn't know. I'm so sorry." The others just exchanged glances, not knowing what to say. Some had wide eyes. Others' faces burned with shame. Emilio gave them one more look, shook his head, and, without looking back, headed to his car. In the hospital, the days felt endless for the couple. Each new morning brought only increased pain and heaviness in Marisol's body. It felt as if a whole mountain was growing inside her. Breathing became increasingly difficult, and the tumor continued to grow, compressing everything more tightly. When the 5th month of pregnancy arrived after weeks of pain, tears, and sleepless nights, this milestone seemed like a ray of hope. But it was obvious that Marisol's body could no longer withstand it. She was incredibly weak, and the pain had become unbearable despite painkillers. The next morning, deep in the night, Emilio dozed off on the chair by her bed. He was exhausted but didn't want to leave her alone for a second. Marisol's sudden groans woke him. At first he thought it was just another difficult night, but her desperate cries made him jump up in terror. He saw Marisol clutching her stomach tightly. Her eyes were clouded with pain. "Emilio, for God's sake, get help!" she screamed. He looked at the sheets and froze. Scarlet spots had appeared on them. God, Marisol! He rushed to the door, shouting, "Help! Someone help!" Medical staff rushed into the room. Dr. Herrera assessed the situation instantly. Without hesitation, he ordered, "To the operating room, immediately!" Emilio squeezed her hand as the medical staff connected equipment. "You'll be okay, love. Everything will be fine. I'm here with you," Marisol cried, fighting the pain. "Emilio, take care of our children, please." "Don't talk like that, Marisol. We'll take care of them together. Be strong." Doctors and nurses hastily wheeled Marisol down the hospital corridors. Emilio followed them right up to the operating room doors, but he wasn't allowed further. The surgical door slammed shut in front of him, and Emilio stood there feeling completely helpless. A few seconds later, his legs gave way, and he sank onto the nearest bench. Time dragged on agonizingly. Every minute felt like an hour. He bowed his head into his hands and whispered a prayer. "Please, God, save them. Don't let me lose my family." Inside the operating room, the atmosphere was extremely tense. Dr. Sarah led the procedure, with Dr. Herrera assisting. "Concentrate on the children first. Get them out," she instructed clearly. The first baby was extracted. He was tiny but breathing. The doctors immediately passed him to the neonatal intensive care unit, NICU. A few minutes later, the second baby appeared, equally weak and small but alive. "Now the tumor. We have little time," said Dr. Sarah. Emilio waited. Every second felt like an eternity. Finally, the operating room door opened, and Dr. Herrera came out, removing his gloves. He took off his surgical mask and looked at Emilio. "The children are born. They are in the neonatal intensive care unit, small but alive." Emilio felt a wave of relief, but then noticed the doctor hadn't finished speaking. "Marisol is still in the operating room. We are removing the tumor. Her condition is stable for now, but the operation is complex and lengthy. We need you to be strong." Emilio nodded. Tears streamed down his face. "I trust you. Please save her." In the operating room, the surgical team worked with intense focus. "The tumor is larger than we anticipated," said one of the assistants, adjusting the surgical lighting. "Concentrate. Everything is going according to plan. Monitor vital sign stability," Dr. Sarah ordered clearly. "Adion." Herrera didn't take his eyes off the monitors, tracking Marisol's heartbeat, oxygen levels, and blood pressure. Each indicator seemed a thin line between life and death. "The tumor is deeply embedded in the uterine tissue. Removal could cause severe bleeding. Prepare blood transfusion just in case," Dr. Sarah instructed, not taking her eyes off the surgical field. Outside, Emilio paced the corridor nervously, unable to sit. He had already visited the NICU and seen the children. They were so tiny, swathed in wires and tubes, he could barely stand being there. Every second in the waiting room felt like an eternity filled with fear and uncertainty. Now all his thoughts were on Marisol. A nurse offered him water, but he refused. His throat was too tight with anxiety. "Is the surgery still going?" he asked Dr. Herrera, who had stepped into the corridor for a moment. "Yes, the team is doing everything possible." Emilio nodded but didn't answer. He knew words of trust meant nothing in the face of fate. The wait in the corridor was excruciating. In the operating room, Dr. Sarah finally managed to remove the tumor. "Tumor removed," she announced, her voice a mix of relief and caution. "But the removal has left a damaged area. We need to repair part of the tissue." The team of doctors worked with extreme care, stabilizing Marisol's condition. After more than 4 hours of surgery, Dr. Sarah finally stepped back and looked at the assistants. "She's out of immediate danger. Now it's up to monitoring," she said with notes of fatigue but also clear relief. Dr. Herrera was the first to come out into the corridor to the waiting Emilio. He took a deep breath before speaking. "Emilio, the operation was successful. We managed to remove the tumor and stop the bleeding. She is in stable condition now." Emilio exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body. His legs almost buckled, and he grabbed the doctor's arm, experiencing overwhelming gratitude. "Thank God, thank you, doctor." "Don't mention it. We were just doing our job. But Marisol will need time to recover. We will monitor her condition closely over the next 24 hours. This period is critical." Several hours later, Amelia was finally allowed into the room where Marisol was. She was still under anesthesia, pale and motionless. but the monitors showed stable vital signs. Carefully, he took her hand, feeling the coldness of her skin. "You did it, love," he whispered as tears streamed down his cheeks. "You did it." While Emilio sat beside her, a nurse entered the room. "Your babies are breathing with help, but that's normal for 7-month preemies. We are optimistic." Emilio thanked her, though he understood the fight wasn't over. He looked at Marisol, squeezed her hand tighter and whispered, "They need you just as much as I do. Please wake up soon." The next morning, Marisol opened her eyes for the first time. She was still very weak. Speaking was difficult. Slowly turning her head, she saw Emilio beside her. "Emilio," she whispered in a trembling voice. He immediately leaned towards her, gently cradling her face in his hands. "I'm here, Marisol. You're okay. The children are alive. You did it, my love." Tears immediately streamed down her cheeks, mixing with a fragile smile. Are they okay? They are fighting just like you," he replied softly, smiling at her with hope. Allowing herself a moment to rest, she knew the path ahead would be long, but for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. The days after the birth became a real roller coaster for Marisol and Emilio. The babies, that still tiny and weak, remained in the neonatal intensive care unit, NICU. They breathed with machine assistance and received nutrition through tubes. Slowly, they began to show significant progress. Victor, initially the weakest, managed to breathe without the machine, and Esperanza, more developed, could already feed from a bottle with Marisol's support. Every small achievement was met with tears of joy and smiles. "Did you see him grab my finger today?" Emilio asked, helping Marisol back to her room after visiting the children. "Yes," she said, her eyes shining. "They get stronger every day." By 2 months, Esperanza and Victor had gained weight and grown, showing reassuring development. The doctors, pleased with their progress, announced that the babies could finally be discharged from the NICU. During the final consultation, Dr. Herrera explained to Marisol how to continue the chemotherapy course. "You're doing great," he said encouragingly. "There are still a few sessions left, but since the doses are low, they shouldn't affect your daily life too much. You might feel a bit tired, but with proper care and support, you can overcome this without much difficulty." Marisol felt relieved. "Thank you, doctor. Just knowing I'll be able to take care of them at home." On the day of discharge, the hospital seemed especially bright. Nurses, doctors, and even other patients who had followed Marisol and the twins' story over these 2 months gathered in the corridor to say goodbye. As Marisol and Emilio walked out holding Esperanza and Victor, the room filled with applause. "Congratulations! You deserve all the happiness in the world." One of the pediatricians from the neonatal unit handed them a small photo album documenting the baby's first days in the NICU. Marisol could barely hold back her emotions as she flipped through the pages. Emilio shook hands with everyone, expressing gratitude. Marisol, deeply moved, thanked each one personally. When they finally got into the car, it felt like shedding an enormous weight from their shoulders. The drive back to the ranch was calm. Marisol sat in the back seat, watching the babies, still so fragile but now safe. With every kilometer traveled, her heart filled with gratitude and hope. When they reached the ranch, the sky was painted in warm orange sunset hues, as if even nature was celebrating this special occasion. Marisol felt a wave of emotion when she saw Major, her horse, standing by the stable. Always loyal and protective, he seemed to understand something extraordinary had happened. He whinnied softly, shaking his head as Marisol got out of the car, holding Esperanza, while Emilio held Victor beside her. "We're home, my darlings," Marisol said to her children, and Emilio, with tears in his eyes. Before entering the house, Marisol insisted on introducing the babies to Major. The horse shifted restlessly, but calmed down immediately when Marisol approached. "This is Esperanza and Victor," she said with a tender smile. "You know, they already know a lot about you. I told them many stories about you while we were in the hospital." Carefully, Major sniffed the babies and whinnied softly, as if welcoming the new members of the family. Emilio seized the moment. "Let's take a photo. I think we'll never forget this moment." Marisol nodded, holding the children. Emilio stood beside her and Major. The sound of the camera shutter captured the essence of this moment: overcoming, love, and unity. Later, Marisol decided to share this photo on social media, adding a touching caption, "Little star, sometimes life tests us in ways we couldn't even imagine." In recent months, I've been through the hardest days of my life, from cruel gossip and judgment to pain and uncertainty in the hospital. We learned that besides our two miracles, there was also a tumor inside me, threatening my life and the lives of my babies. But with God's strength, the support of my incredible husband, and doctors who didn't give up for a second, we are here today. My babies are healthy, and I am winning a battle that seemed impossible. It wasn't easy, and there's still a long road ahead. But today I know how strong we are. To all who doubted, judged, and spoke without knowing the truth, I only wish you never have to go through what I endured. And to everyone who supported us, thank you. Today we celebrate what truly matters, our family and the love that overcomes everything. May this photo be a reminder that even the darkest days can lead to a happy ending. Little Star. The post instantly gathered numerous comments of support, apologies from former critics, and warm congratulations. So with a sense of relief and triumph, Marisol, Emilio, Esperanza, and Victor began a new chapter of their lives.